And we have sound.
We have sound.
Okay. Well, it's great to be back in person on May 22nd for a regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. So for everyone who would like to, we'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and tonight we will swear in our newest trustee, Liv Edwards. So we have our town attorney, Clayton Buckner, here to take us through that.
For the record, I have authority under statute by being an officer of the court, and because I am a United States Army officer, I have federal authority as a notary. Just in case anybody wants to challenge Miss Edwards. Okay, you would please stand, Miss Edwards, and raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
I solemnly swear that I will support the laws and the Constitution of the United States,
The Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado.
Constitution and laws and of the state of Colorado,
And the ordinances and codes of the town of Silverton.
the ordinances and the codes of the town of Silverton,
And that I will faithfully perform all duties of the office of town trustee.
and that I will faithfully perform all duties of the office of town trustee
Upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you. Congratulations. You seem very clever in your interview, so I figured I'd string it out a bit for you.
Your first test.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll do a roll call.
All righty, Trustee Edwards,
Here.
Trustee Cranker, Trustee Harper,
Here.
Trustee Bierma.
Here.
Trustee George,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney. Mayor Furman, I think will not be joining us tonight. So we have 6 out of 7 trustees in attendance tonight.
Okay, so are there any staff or board revisions to the agenda?
Staff does not have any revisions.
Great. All right, then we'll move to public comment. Anyone who wants to speak may do so in person first. Anyone in person who wants to speak, and then we'll look online. Okay, so no one in person, but do you see anyone online, Nate? Okay.
Yes, we have one from the coffee bear.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, if you can just introduce yourself.
I'm Holly Hubner, and I'm one of the owners of the Coffee Bear. Hi.
Hi, Holly. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm calling in from the baseball field at the front of town. We're playing our first kickball game of the season, the summer season. And two things I just wanted to first and foremost say thank you to the town and the recreational department for coming out here and mowing the field today. And I guess my public comment and my ask would be that we maintain this moving forward so that way we can continue to use it and improve it.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, thank you.
Too bad we can't all be there playing with you.
Well, starting in June, we'll be on Sunday night. So soon enough, you can.
All right.
It's awesome.
Okay,
Love
thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
None at this time.
Okay. Then we will move on to item number 4, presentations and proclamations, starting with the Hard Rock 100.
And we do have Dale Garland joining us. Dale, you have the report.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dale.
How's it going?
It's great.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. For those
You
of you who
ready?
don't, yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dale Garland, and I'm the run director for the Hard Rock 100 Endurance Run. And what I'm here for tonight is to give you an update on the Hard Rock 100 Endurance Run, and then make sure that we are administratively in sync with everything that the town needs. I think first I'd like to say a big thank you to Nathan Baxter and just how great a job he's doing for the town, but then also for us. It's a pleasure really to work with him, and also to John Seitz and to Bruce Conrad for all their support of the Hard Rock 100. Nathan, do they have a copy of the report?
They do.
Perfect. Okay. Everybody, I don't want to bore you with the entire report, but for those of you who are new to the Hard Rock 100, it's a 100-mile run in July, third weekend in July. And at the end of every year, what we do is we ask the runners, community, or the runners and everybody about their impressions of Silverton and their experience. And then we compile that and send it off to you. So what you have sitting in front of you really is the final results of the survey and the input that the runners and everybody gave to us. So just a couple of things that are, I think, worth noting from a town perspective. You can see that we asked them about their impressions of the community, giving us a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being they really love it, and 5 is we could hardly wait to get out of town. And our clientele and our runners scored Silverton a 1.12 average, which tells us that they really do enjoy coming to Silverton. We also ask them about how do they feel about the prices and the merchandise and the goods that the community has. And again, they had great feedback for us. It scored Silverton a 1.4 out of a 5. So they are definitely feeling like they're not being ripped off by the community. Probably the biggest number, the number that we're most impressed by, is just how much of an economic impact Hard Rock is now becoming to the community. We estimate that we generate about $900,000 in good tourist-based money. And most of that, the lion's share of that, does go to the town of Silverton in terms of lodging, the time that they spend here eating, those kinds of things. So we're thinking that we're in a very good spot there with the community. What else? Moving forward, we are tentatively planning on holding Hard Rock July 14th through the 16th. And obviously the big question is the snow. We monitor the snow and the snow water equivalency and all of those things almost on a daily basis. We will be making a final decision on the status of the 2023 Hard Rock this weekend, and letting everyone know if we're actually going to hold Hard Rock this year. If I were to guess right now, everything is trending towards us holding it again this year. And so we'll let you know next week for sure on that. A couple other highlights for 2023. We actually had a huge number of people apply to Hard Rock this year. We had over 2,200 people apply, representing 40 states, 60 foreign countries, and we picked our field from that number. And kind of, I guess, for Silverton, a real cool thing is that we have 5 people from Silverton running this year. Thanks. And so we're excited about that for 2023. We also are continuing to work on our philanthropy. We have 3 things that we work on. One is our trail education and trail etiquette, also on gender equity, and the third thing on education. We've crossed over a fairly large milestone. We had our largest in terms of education. We now have donated over $250,000 to the Joel Zucker Scholarship to the students of the 4 communities we run through. And then we also will be hosting a Women in Running seminar weekend in September. We're working with one of our corporate partners on that. Probably, every year there's good and bad. This year, I think probably the biggest thing that we are worried about. Oh, I want to go back one thing. In terms of the trails and trail etiquette, we've teamed up with San Juan Search and Rescue, San Juan County Search and Rescue, to host a public session on moving safely through the backcountry. I think we're all aware of some of the issues that we had last year with some people getting, not us losing people, but the tragedies that befell some of the people in the San Juans. And so we're going to do something kind of proactive for that. And then we'll also be giving that over to our social media director so he can live stream that. We were saddened by, many of you I know knew Leo Lloyd. We were saddened by his loss, but we're also very excited to have Dave Fiddler now as our new medical coordinator. And so he'll be stepping into some rather large shoes of Leo Lloyd's, but we're confident that Dave can do it. Finally, I think I called Nathan and we had a discussion today. I think all of our permits are in place. The town's been recognized by, the town has our certificate of insurance named as an additional insured. I think we're all good to go on our permits. So with that being said, I'd be open to any questions you might have.
Well, thanks for that, Dale. I know everyone loves and appreciates this event. Any comments or discussion? Oh, yeah.
I would again like to thank Dale Garland for his efficiency in running this type of an event. He is the absolute best to work with. And thank you, Dale.
You bet. We make a good team, don't we, Nathan?
I think so.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Kudos for bringing on Dave Fiddler. Not only an expert in EMS and rescue, but he's been here for 25 years. So I don't think anybody really, has a better idea of the area than he will. I mean, again, like you said, it was tough to replace Leo, but
Right.
I think he was the best candidate. So great job there.
Thanks, Trustee George. Thank you. Yeah, we're excited about getting him up to speed and getting him, and we're trying to give him a good crew to work with and a supporting group to work with, and make sure that he hits the ground running.
Yep.
Nice. Do you need anything from us tonight, Nathan?
No, this was just a presentation. It is a contracted event. So you've already approved it. Thank you.
Nice. All right. Thanks, Dale. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, trustees. It's good seeing you all.
See you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So we'll now move on to item number 5, new business, returning to Nathan with special events guide overview.
So this is our version 6.0 of this special event guide. It has taken quite some time to get to this point. I do want to thank Sophia for her assistance throughout this process, but it is finally in a format that I think the public can and will be able to understand. Now, let me share my screen so everyone can see that. That's not gonna work for me. Okay, so we'll just drag this over here.
So is this something, if you're on Zoom?
I am about to share.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay. With our special events guide, we did pass the ordinance as well as the policy document for a special event guide. And as I mentioned, we have gone through multiple iterations of this guide. Now, with this current format, you will see that there are questions, just the basics. What is a special events permit? How do you get a special events permit? What's required with that? And every piece of information in here is from our ordinance, from our participating agencies, such as EMS, Sheriff's Department. And documents are fun. I actually prefer, if I can make a quick change. We are going to go to the Town of Silverton website, which I can go ahead and log into. So with this document, my whole goal was to create a online fillable online access so people can fill out their own event paperwork and then just bring it back. And on our communications and events page, it's going to have the basic information, just special events, facility rentals, and so forth. But we are going to update it so anyone can go to departments, find communications and events, and continue from there. And if you will bear with me. Hard to do it looking at that.
Yeah.
We now have a new page just for special events within the Town of Silverton's website. Now, once you click on this link, it is the exact same document that you have in front of you that has been shared to our screen. Nice little welcome, but it is all the information in accordion style. But the great option is it does define out what a special event is, what a private event is, when a liquor permit is required. We are a local only method now, so town approves a special event liquor permit. And it does not go to the state. But the most important part, how do you apply for a special event? We have the paper document in town hall. And it's going to take its time. I've turned that document into an online fillable format where you can also upload documents. So all the operational plans, medical plans, safety plans, they have to be included. And this link,
Nice.
when you complete the document, at the very bottom, you're able to upload any supporting documents, any posters, any information that you currently have. And then we have our release indemnifications. You can sign your document. Once you sign that, all the information goes onto our existing form. I get an email within the Town of Silverton account. I update it and I can contact the event organizer and go from there. This will save probably a couple days worth of work for each event that comes through. The next process is to continue with all our rental applications, any permit applications. But if we go back, the very bottom of our new page, where can I find all the applications and forms to deal with special events and private events? I have a separate folder in our Google Drive that has every single application that you could possibly need. You can download it, and eventually within hopefully the next 6 months, fingers crossed, they will be fillable online as well. I do want to thank Lisa. She helped start this process. And with our current guide, we are going to be working on some minor revisions from public comments that have been received, just to make it more understandable. And do we have any questions?
So exciting. Nice work.
Mr. Revenue. Thank you, Gloria, for all your assistance. She was pretty instrumental when I was lost and I went to be next.
So we have seen a few iterations of this, and this is certainly the most streamlined and clear, I guess. It, like, I think the question format works really well. I noticed that right away. I like the drop down menu. Anything else?
I was just gonna say, I think it strikes a really nice balance and what we've all talked about before of like how to help promote events that bring community together, reduce barriers to try to have those events that really, help us with our master plan and help bring people together while also having some, liability protection for the town and just kind of striking that nice balance between organizational infrastructure and community engagement and connection. So thanks for taking all the feedback, Nathan, and make it, I think, easier for people that are trying to plan events.
And each section does have links for the applications and fee schedules. So all the information's finally on there.
Has anyone used it yet?
I just published it live 5 minutes before we started. I didn't
So
want
tons of people.
Yeah,
They're just,
yeah.
it's like Taylor Swift. Cool. I'm excited to see how it kind of works out.
And again, just to clarify, if folks still like a paper version, they can do that with you.
correct. Part of the application process is to contact me.
Yeah.
You can either email inbaxter@silverton.co.us, call the town hall office or my direct number, which is also listed, and I can help you through the first step. You can do the majority yourself now.
Yeah, some of our legacy events might like paper better sometimes.
Papers still go. Thank you.
Nice. Anything else? That was information. Actions. So, all right, let's move on to new business B. First reading of ordinance 2023-01, an ordinance of the town of Silverton concerning designing affordable housing. And it goes on, but let's just leave it at that.
I can start this while we're promoting Katie to panelist. So this also has to do with our pass-through policy, which we currently have with Public Works. So if we require extra engineering or a review by our attorney, we cover that in Public Works under Chapter 13, but we don't have it currently for our planning. So this would help with that. And as we were thinking about it, can you promote Katie to panelist?
Oh, I have.
There she is. There we go.
Hello.
All right, Katie, take it away.
Okay, you were doing a great job. I thought I would let you keep going.
Heard your spiel a couple times.
Okay, so really this is focused on pass-through costs. The affordable housing was added in, and you'll see why as I go through this explanation of where we're going with this ordinance right now. So just to kind of scroll through here, I think you all are aware of the existing concerns of why the town is trying to bring this forward now instead of waiting for a whole code rewrite. And that is because there have been so many technical applications submitted to the town. And so the town has been using a lot of planning consultant, town attorney assistance, and also they foresee more and more engineering consultants being used as applications come in. Since land is becoming more limited in Silverton, you tend to see the properties being constructed or planned for construction that may have more items on them, such as natural constraints, and those require more technical review. So because of that increase, the town has found that their application fees really don't cover the costs of these outside consultants. So the plan is By you having this in the code, the town would be able to have a applicant pay for the consultant services that are used directly for their application review. There would be no extra money taken in. It would be specifically for just their application and the specific invoicing that's occurring for that. So the intent is, as said, basically you'd have a separate agreement. So the code the code language would allow the town to do this. And then town staff would coordinate with an applicant. What they have developed was in your application packet. That's the agreement for payment of development review expenses. Now that can be slightly amended on a case-by-case basis based on what the application is for. And that includes the fact that town staff thought that this would be a good opportunity to potentially allow a reduction in fees if a development proposes affordable housing. So that's not a given, but it's definitely an incentive for developers who are proposing affordable housing that the town may be able to work out with them to reduce these pass-through costs. And therefore the town would basically take on more of the payment for the consultant fees that are associated with an affordable housing project. So where the affordable housing comes in with this ordinance and pass-through costs is that to allow a reduction in fees for an affordable housing project, we really felt you had to have a definition of affordable housing, which currently does not exist in the town code. So the ordinance right now is proposing a very basic definition of affordable housing. This is basic for a reason, and that is because we're recognizing that a lot of discussion needs to occur on affordable housing in the future, and that will take place during a full code rewrite, especially, and that could include more policy writings, different types of affordable housing, different types of incentives, things like that. So this is basically just having a very general definition of affordable housing that a developer, an application could say that they are meeting the intent to allow the town to then potentially negotiate that waiver of fee reductions from the pass-through costs, meaning the consultant costs invoicing. So that is all that this is doing right now. It's not putting in place any special affordable housing regulations or policies. It's just recognizing what the town considers an affordable housing. With that, the town staff is supportive of 140% area median income based on history and other discussions held by the town in the past. So because of that, that's where that 140% is coming in. I will, as a side note, let the town know that the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, releases those AMI numbers on an annual basis, and they actually just came out in the last, I believe, week or two. So your town staff now has access to the fiscal year 2023 AMI numbers. They are released by HUD at a 50 and 80% AMI, and then basically you extrapolate from there to get up to 140%. So I don't want to get really sidetracked on that. I'm happy to provide further information when you get to discussions, but I wanted to also really emphasize this is just to get a definition in place so that if the town wants to reduce the consulting costs for an affordable housing project, this allows them to enter into that negotiation on that separate document that was included in your packet. So again, intent is zoning, which is your chapter 16, and subdivisions, which is your section 17, to have this allowing pass-through costs to go on, back to applicants. So we're looking at it for all land development under zoning and also all subdivision applications. This also, as a side note, is a process that is already in your public works chapter 13, I think it is. And so it's already something the town utilizes for certain applications through public works, but it has not been in place for land development, zoning, and subdivision applications as of so far to date. We did recognize in that staff report that the Compass Master Plan, which does show community need that was recently adopted last August, does have a strategy D to reduce or waive fees for development that includes significant deed restricted housing. So by incorporating that definition and that allowance for a reduction for affordable housing costs, we actually were able to start addressing some of the community need that was expressed in that Silverton Compass Plan. So we kind of have a way to connect the dots a little bit and keep the town moving forward in the way that community expressed the need for. So Planning Commission, they provided their recommendation to the Board of Trustees on May 16th. You would have seen the same recap in your staff report that was presented to you in your packet. I did want to just kind of go over a brief overview of their discussion. One is there was some discussion on the definition of affordable housing and is it too vague? And that's why I kind of wanted to emphasize to the board tonight that it is vague, but kind of on purpose because the town's not ready to really get into specifics of affordable housing policy. I don't think at this point in time, and that's hopefully to come over the next few months. The Planning Commission raised the question about 140% AMI, and is that a good number to utilize? I will echo that I believe that your town staff has a really good grasp of what this should be. And so definitely happy to hear comments from the board, but at this point, I would recommend you go with what your town staff over at Town Hall felt was the best AMI to use in the definition. And another one was just some clarification about building permit fees. To clarify, this ordinance is only for those consultant costs. It's not for other fees that aren't in planning and subdivisions, land use development. And then the biggest discussion or the one that the Planning Commission decided to carry on to Board of Trustees in their motion. They didn't have a specific number of years, but they did want the Board of Trustees to consider adding a certain amount of years for the term of covenants for affordability. So what that means is that, again, kind of getting a little bit sidetracked from the pass-through costs and the purpose of that. But if it was an affordable housing, then it would be, if someone came in and said they were going to build affordable housing, the town would want to make sure that, because anyone could say that, but you want to make sure that is actually implemented and you get that public good that you were hoping for and that you were told you would get. So what you do is you put what's considered a covenant, usually a deed restricted covenant on that property, and it gets recorded on the land. So any title search, any sale of land will bring up this covenant. So any future owner would have to honor this covenant tied to the property. Now that covenant can be very vague or it can be very detailed based on the town policies that they want to enact over time. So typically a community will go and have that covenant recorded on a property for perpetuity. The ordinance right now does not state in perpetuity. It had been put in there by staff and then recommended to be removed through more expertise by the town attorney and his legal background. So the Planning Commission did want to get a little bit more information on that, or at least encourage the Board of Trustees to. And the Planning Commission wanted to pass on that they would like to see the covenants recorded in perpetuity and not just for a limited time, such as 20 years. So that was the main discussion from Planning Commission. They did make a recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the ordinance. Of course, this is your first reading tonight, and amending those sections of code that we discussed, with one caveat that the board explore the length of term of covenants for affordability. And with that said, the Board of Trustees tonight, as you know, you have the first reading before you, so you can support the first reading as presented, support it with modifications, or deny the first reading of the ordinance. Staff recommends that you support the first reading of the ordinance as presented and move it forward to a second reading on June 12th, 2023. With that, I'll turn it over for questions and discussion.
Thanks, Katie. Excellent as usual. Jim, do you want to bring up any of the Planning Commission discussion to kick us off?
No, that was a perfect summary of what we had discussed. Sincerely, there's not much more I can add to that. Perfect.
So on the issue of perpetuity, that would be a change that we would need to all agree to this evening, right, Katie?
Correct. And honestly, whether you agree to it or not tonight, it's not too big of a deal because you're still going to have covenants recorded. And someone would need to get official approval to remove that from the land. But it's worth probably expressing if you would like in perpetuity to be added specifically. I don't think it's too big of a deal either way right now, because obviously we're going to be fine tuning language in the code over time too. So,
right. You want to speak to that at all, Clay?
Do you want me to answer any question about it? I have
Katie,
speak to it ad nauseum. So
Okay.
I I'd want to answer any questions you might.
My sense from Katie is that she was indicating that there was a legal reason that we may or may not want to consider that language. Can you explain that?
Sure, I think idealistically, and I understand why the planning commission wants in perpetuity, it's what everybody wants. Unfortunately, what I've seen pragmatically is that it deters a lot of opportunity for private-public partnership and type development because developers can make affordable housing pencil for a certain amount of time, knowing that they have an opportunity in the future for their development to go to market rate. What I've seen be most successful is the type of fees that were discussed. Getting basically getting exemption from tap fees, market fees, et cetera, but also types of things like density bonuses and zoning bonuses and other things that will incentivize development. And what I've seen work really well is people come in and say, well, look, I can build 20 units for you. I'll do 10 in perpetuity, but 10 for 10 years.
Mhm.
And otherwise you would get nothing. So if what we're looking at is stock and all Western Slope, Southern Colorado, Front Range, name it, affordable housing is a major issue. And this is kind of like a best practice that I've seen. And that's kind of, well researched and discussed and accepted in, the community, like municipal league, basically. And it's something that I've seen personally work in multiple municipalities, and I've been a part of it. And so all that to say, of course, I want affordable housing in perpetuity for the idea of it. But I have seen a lot of developments fail because of that factor, and a lot come to fruition because of a compromise. So my advice was based on allowing the board to have flexibility when we go to the table and say, hey, we're going to have a density bonus policy, we're going to have a zoning bonus, we're going to have fee exemptions to incentivize development of affordable housing. When it gets to the actual, hey, let's sign the papers, and this person's about to build something that they're never going to have out of deed restriction,
Mhm.
it's a tough pill to swallow is what we've seen. And so where we've seen it be successful is when we get when we want to cross the finish line is how's 14 years, how's 20 years, or some sort of inversion scale where we can give you more exemptions the more you deed restrict your property. And so it gives you leverage to negotiate with those P3 type situations. That's my synopsis on
So
it.
the language, the word perpetuity
Means forever.
means, yeah, got it. And precludes any of that negotiation. That just completely leaves the table between a municipality and a developer. Whereas if the language, like what does the language say to, and I guess I hear you, Katie, that we don't really have to get into that discussion tonight, but I'm just curious, like how to express that sentiment short of perpetuity.
Well, you can do it. There's countless ways, but you can create a sliding scale, starting with what you would want as a minimum, 10, 15, 20 years, and then incentivize more based on the how long that you would agree to a deed restriction. There is just open negotiation. Hey, we can help you make this pencil. We can incentivize you in these multiple different ways. Other municipalities have more than for example, have doubled in density bonus value. So wherein you come and you can only build a 10 unit, you would allow a 20 unit if a certain percentage of those units were deed restricted. So there's a lot of ways to skin that cat.
And that's something that we'll return to in those code rewrite discussions.
Yeah.
And that was truly me looking at all the perpetuity and saying, I like that, but it doesn't give developers a warm fuzzy. you're kind of starting with a very hard line with the developer. And I don't see a lot of successful government-owned, government-operated affordable housing. I see a lot of successful P3 development.
Yeah.
That's just right now. That could trend differently. That's just my 2 cents.
Are those municipalities that have been successful with it have the same geographical limitations that we do?
I don't know, other than like 2 or 3 other towns in Colorado that have the same exact geographical, but yes, and I mean, small mountain towns completely surrounded by national forest or, you know, that are geographically landlocked. Yes. Slida is not a great example, but Slida has a great P3 example. Pagosa is pretty far down the road with the P3. You know, there's lots of examples, but yeah, I mean, unless you're a Uray, a Lake City, or a Silverton, there's not a lot of towns this size, this geographically locked. But that if there's property and there's money to be made, then there's a possibility for that P3. And so, yeah, geographically, you guys are very nuanced, but I think it's possible. I don't think that would be a major inhibitor, especially with our policy for land banking. If we had the property, that's another thing that towns do. Mayor Pro Tem Barney is they will say, well, look, we have this property. We'll give you the land,
Yeah.
build it for us,
Yeah.
give us half the units deed restricted and half not,
Mhm.
or whatever. And then all of a sudden you have somebody that's willing to come in and build that development for you. And then you have 10, 15 units that you can deed restrict for town staff and, you know, AMI, however you define it.
Mhm.
So in this definition, what are our options? Can we strike in perpetuity? Have to put a number of years in there? Can we just say, because I recognize that we're probably going to have a much more robust debate about how we incentivize affordable housing and how we pull some of those policy levers that aren't just the town building units. So for the purposes of what we're trying to do here, to have somewhat of a definition to move forward with these costs, reimbursements and costs, can we do something where it just says a dwelling unit that is restricted through recordation of a covenant? Or do we have to put years?
No, I like this definition.
Okay.
That's just, a covenant means it's deed restricted.
Yeah.
You get to decide. This gives you as a decision-making body the most flexibility possible.
Okay, so what's here where it has in perpetuity?
And I noticed that if you go to the actual ordinance, it doesn't have it. This
Right.
sheet on the agenda, it has it because that was an original working definition. I think that was just a,
Yes.
and so the actual definition in the ordinance does not have the word perpetuity.
Yeah.
That's my fault.
Just recordation of a covenant. Yeah, and that gives us
I like that a lot.
most flexibility.
But PC might not like it as much as me.
No, I agree with Clayton too, and we apologize. There was that discrepancy in the report itself. When we changed it, we forgot to update all the spots, but what is proposed in the ordinance doesn't have perpetuity. It has that, it still says it has to be restricted to a covenant, but we don't have a proposed timeline. And I think that makes the most sense for the town and future projects.
Well, it strikes me that the sensitivity here around this language is things I've heard from people in the community that have frustrations around things, properties having been affordable and now not, and just the squeeze that a lot of people feel. And so I recognize that sensitivity, but I think if we're able to communicate that we have intention to find ways to still work on housing, right? That's what we're really talking about here, is finding ways to still work on housing.
And that this is how we would find those ways.
Right.
Potentially, because we would have more flexibility in those negotiations.
Yeah.
And that's how we jumped onto this whole topic, was knowing that there's been projects here in the past
Mhm.
that have been affordable.
Right.
And after the first seller or the second seller, then it just became
Yeah.
up to the marketplace. How do we keep to the true intent of affordable housing?
Mhm.
Is that a 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year? How do you say that? But more importantly, how do you do that?
Mhm.
Because this is really for our town, this is for our community. So how best do we do that? What mechanism do we put in place?
Yeah, and my concern is, I mean, if it's open negotiation, so when somebody wants to get rid of that deed restriction, do they come to the town board or do they go to the administrator? And then, because right now we're trying to streamline all of these processes. But if everything's open to negotiation, we have to visit one of these every meeting, or it's going to put more burden on the staff, then I don't know. I think we need to have something in place that's not just, oh yeah, come and negotiate it as soon as you build the project.
Well, and I think all that is done up front.
Okay.
So what you're gonna see in a normal course of events is someone, a developer, a builder, come to the town and say, I'd like to take advantage of your affordable housing benefits, these exemptions, these tap fee, reductions, whatever you decide to do, the density bonus, name it. That's up for you to determine how you want to incentivize it. Then at the outset, you say, well, we don't even begin to consider exemptions until you promise a 10-year, whatever you decide. At 15 years, you get the tap fees and a density bonus. At 20 years, you get a tap fee, a density, but I'm just making, what I'm saying?
Right.
Or if you do it a full, we'll give you a piece of property and you can build it and you get the density bonus and you get the tap, you get it all for free. And then all of a sudden those overhead expenses from the beginning of a project go down. Excuse me. So my point being, nobody's going to negotiate this in flow. It's going to be at the outset. The deed restriction sets as soon as you allow them the exemption, and then it doesn't go away until you want it to, and you won't have to keep renegotiating it.
Perfect.
So that's,
And this is a circumstance where where the town is interacting with private developers, because I think where I would feel like the perpetuity language is where I would be more persuaded that that was essential to be in the definition is when it's our own housing. It's housing that the town of Silverton is funding and developing and building, and it's a town project. Then I think that's sort of a different scenario than when we're trying to increase our housing stock in these partnerships.
and that's your, it's the go-go versus the go-co analysis. So government owned, government operated, yes, there'd be no reason you'd spend taxpayer dollars and not restrict it in perpetuity. But if you're in GoCo mode, government owned, commercially operated or commercially developed, then why would a commercial, unless your benefits and exemptions were just absolutely astronomical, what would they benefit from restricting from 140 AMI when they could get 300 AMI? I mean, you're asking somebody to undercut their profit margin by 100, if not more %. If you don't give them an incentive, they're not going to come. So that I would say, you need to be that my analysis only is with that GoCo sort of environment, not government owned, government operated. Oh yeah, slap a perpetuity, deed restricted forever, of course. But this is just a way to not push away private development if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, because the town will never solve affordable housing this time by just building 8 units at a time or 10 units at a time. Like, we have to use the policy levers that we have that are not just us building or constructing. We have to be able to create incentives and shift the marketplace in town through a whole variety of mechanisms.
You can pass a tax too. Everybody loves taxes.
Fee.
Okay. So tonight we need to have a motion to pass the first reading of this ordinance. Is that correct, Katie? Do we have further discussion on anything other than that language of perpetuity or anything else in the ordinance?
No, thanks for finally coming up with a definition for affordable housing. Everybody that come in front of us has said they're going to build it, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. So, thank you.
All right, then if we're ready for a motion, would someone be willing to take that on? Oh, yeah, I don't have, I think, is it?
Yeah, you can read it.
Okay, all right, I'll make a motion for ordinance 2023-01, an ordinance of the town of Silverton concerning defining affordable housing and concerning the collection of expenses related to land development applications and providing for developer cost reimbursement agreements by modifying sections 1-2-10 general definitions and adding section 16-1-80 cost reimbursement and adding section 17-1-90 cost reimbursement.
Second.
Thanks. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards,
Yes.
trustee Kränker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierma, trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Okay, now we'll move on to item C. This is also a first reading of ordinance 2023-07, an ordinance of the town of Silverton concerning accessory dwelling units by modifying our code. Katie.
I'll give you the overview, don't worry. Great. Thank you. So Clayton did a really good job too of kind of leading into this unexpectedly by saying there are a lot of different changes that the town can discuss and do, such as density bonus and things like that we'll have future discussions with. One really quick and easy way to help encourage more local housing, or at least housing in general, including smaller units and infill in town, is accessory dwelling units. So what happened with the development analysis that was done recently was it was determined that accessory dwelling units really are not in the code the way it's written right now. They're not really being utilized. It's not encouraging to people, and it's also partly because they all require a use by a special right, and that is an extra application process that they go through, along with some extra time and expense. And then also we realized that the standards could be a little more flexible. So I'll give you a brief overview of what we're looking at. But again, this is a kind of a quick fix solution to just accessory dwelling units in general to help encourage them into the town of Silverton. And by doing that, what we're doing is just proposing some basic modifications. It looks like a full code rewrite of the section because the track changes got to look a little too much as we were reorganizing. And so I do want to give you a kind of a disclaimer. A lot of this is actually your existing language from the code that you probably recognized as you read it. So as you're aware, existing housing, existing concerns is that local housing and a desire for infill is obviously an express need by the community that came out in the Compass Master Plan and also the Development Readiness Assessment. So ADUs are a tool which helps promote infill and provide that kind of more density. Even though it's not technically by planning called density, you get those extra homes for residents that can get built and constructed on a property. So right now in the town code, out of all your zone districts, one zone district does not allow ADUs at all, and all of the other ones require them as a use by special permit or use by special review. So what we're proposing to do is to allow ADUs as a permitted use within all zone districts. So that what that means is that if an applicant or a property owner was going to construct an ADU, if it meets the standards in the code, they don't have to come before the Planning Commission or the Board of Trustees for a special permit. Instead, they're just going to go ahead and get their building permit. So they obviously will have to meet the standards in the code for accessory dwelling units, and they'll also have to obviously meet all building code requirements and fire safety, life and fire safety regulations. So they're not free for all, but they don't have to go through a special permit process with Planning Commission and Board of Trustees the way that this is written. So what we did was we cleaned up the definition a little bit. It read a little confusing the way it was today. We kind of tried to merge what was there today and also add a little bit to be clearer what an ADU is. And I know you saw that in your staff report, so I'm not going to read it verbatim to you. Then we, as I said, are proposing to remove as a use subject to review and instead insert them under accessory uses and structures for all of these zoning districts. Now, accessory uses and structures is where most communities put them. It's not its own use because it does have to be in connection to another use on the property. And then public use district is the one district in town that currently doesn't allow them. You may look at that and say, well, why would we want them there? No one would ever build an ADU within our public use district. But a lot of, especially towns, are using some creative approaches lately. I personally have seen employee housing go in public workshops that are being constructed these days. And it just is a way to provide, while they're building or expanding on existing facilities, they're adding employee housing units so that they can house their employees in that shop. And also it gives them a little security for certain uses to have employees staying there and living there. So we put it in as a use permitted or as an accessory use permitted by right in the public use. I did want to explain why we did that. If the town feels that it shouldn't be allowed in there, definitely up for discussion, but I did want to note it currently is not allowed at all in the public use district. And then moving through this a little bit more, standards. So we tried to make the standards a little bit more flexible, and this was done a lot thanks to your town staff and the questions and the inquiries that they have been fielding for months or even years. So when someone comes in to construct an ADU and they walk away and they never come back, why is that? How is the town losing this momentum that somebody was really enthused about? And what it comes down to is, well, what part of our regs was really discouraging to somebody? And so one of them staff felt was the size limitation that was in there currently. And so right now, the proposed language existing in the code has it up to a 700 square foot unit size. And town staff felt like if it was a little bit larger, it would help people out, encourage moving forward with constructing an ADU. So we had first provided some examples and sample language that had 50% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling instead of a square footage. So if you have a larger single family house, you might have more land, you can do a larger accessory dwelling unit. That we got really good feedback, thanks to Lucy and Bevan, that they did not feel like that was the way the town should go. And so we kind of kept modifying it and working it out and figuring out that, especially with some help from Bevan and Lucy, that ideally from what they've heard in the community, from the people they speak to on a day-to-day basis who have inquired about ADUs, is that it could be up to 800 square feet of usable floor area or 50% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, whichever is greater. So you're not allowing a full humongous ADU potentially all the time. And depends on the size of the existing structure. And then we wanted to also remove the fact, sorry about that. Right now, ADUs are required to be detached from a structure. So just from kind of a common sense standpoint, you have very small lots in Silverton. It's one of the things that makes it unique and kind of neat is that you have your smaller structures, your smaller lots, and that's something the town wants to continue. So if you have a detached accessory dwelling unit, it's very difficult to fit that on a property and meet required building code setbacks for windows and structures and things like that for detached structures. It's also very difficult to add a detached accessory dwelling unit to a lot that's small and meet setbacks. There's just not enough room on a property usually as far as size requirements go in Silverton and what typical properties are. So we have modified the language in the code to support ADUs to be able to be attached to the primary unit. In other words, somebody could convert an existing part of their existing house to an ADU, or they can build an addition. It would still need to meet building code separation requirements, which is a little bit extra burden, and there's no way to get around that between dwelling units. But at least they have the option to do it if they wanted to go forward and meet code requirements. And then one other change, which really didn't make a lot of sense, was there some, sorry, I'm not on the present slideshow and my clicker keeps popping up here on you. The ADUs, there is some differences in height, and it just makes more sense to say they cannot exceed the zone district's most stringent maximum height requirements instead of having different formulas in there. So we just went with the normal zone district height requirement. So with all that said, that is actually the main changes that we made. despite the fact that it looks like a lot more. The Compass Plan, obviously you saw this in your staff report. I won't read through it, but it definitely supports the proposed changes to this code section. And then Planning Commission. Last week on May 16th, they had a good discussion, and a couple of them or some, and I'm going to clarify, and I don't know if this was super clear in the staff report either. These were not overall opinions by the entire Planning Commission as a whole. What the Planning Commission really agreed to as a whole gets put into the motion. These are things that certain either 1 or 2 or 5 planning commissioners discussed or felt was a concern. So I just want to clarify, some commissioners, when I say that, it doesn't mean the whole commission. It just means that a few of them thought an allowance up to 50% gross square footage was too large for an ADU. And they kind of went back and forth on that and didn't have a big consensus at the end. Another discussion came up inquiring about if remote workers should be permitted in accessory dwelling units. The way that the code is written is that you need to be able to work a minimum of 32 hours a week within San Juan County. And therefore, a remote worker probably could not live in an accessory dwelling unit. So that brought up some concern by some planning commission members of, well, they still are considered locals and they would fill those beds because they shop here, they take advantage of our restaurants and our services in town if they're living here full-time but working with a paycheck coming someplace else. So that was a discussion that came up at Planning Commission with some excellent points. Also, okay, so the section that should be removed, I have on the next slide to show you instead of trying to explain it. And then same thing for section G1. I'll show you visit so you can actually see it visually. And then should ADUs be permitted by right in the single family residential district due to increased use, crowding, and parking? So again, this was an insight shared by 1 or 2 commissioner members who felt that that single family residential district should not have ADUs permitted by right at all. And then, as kind of already mentioned, there was discussion about tenants. Some of the planning commissioners felt like there should not be the requirement to work a minimum of 32 hours a week within San Juan County. So the actual motion for the recommendation to the Board of Trustees was to approve the ordinance with a couple of modifications. And you can see in here under G1, just adding with, that was a carryover, that paragraph from the existing code. So it's been written that way, but planning commissioners felt like it might as well clean it up a little while we're changing the code language. And then G2 states, and this again has been carried over from the existing code language, about how ADUs shall be oriented and designed in a manner, and basically it gets into site specific conditions. And Planning Commission brought up how they didn't really feel that this was something that could really be brought forward and reviewed really well. And staff definitely agreed with them. We brought it over because it was in the code. We didn't want to change too much on the town on this draft of ordinance coming through. But honestly, I don't know how this could ever really be reviewed by staff and enforced. So we ended up saying, a planning commission, we agree with you. Let's just propose you to have the board strike it all out. So those were the 2 changes in the motion that they request you make. That was not changed in your ordinance and in your staff report. And the reason for that is because we wanted to present to you exactly what we presented to Planning Commission. However, I want to let you know that staff does fully support these modifications that Planning Commission suggested. And we would encourage you to also make these modifications with your motion. And you can basically do that if you choose to by modifying the ordinance language as recommended by the Planning Commission. So again, we brought forward to you what we brought forward to Planning Commission, but I want to acknowledge that we are fully on board with this and that these proposed changes do make sense. And then again, you can support as presented without any modifications, support with modifications, or deny it. And we are supporting, I apologize, I wrote as presented, but really as presented with modifications as suggested by Planning Commission is what our recommendation is for you. So pass it back over.
Great. Thanks, Katie.
That was perfect. Nothing to say, that was perfect. Exactly what we discussed.
Excellent. I'm trying to make it clear so that you don't have to try to remember. Like that's kind of what we're here for, right? So I'm glad I can help recap. But if I'm ever wrong, you better correct me. So.
All right, so primarily what we need to discuss in this ordinance is the ability for the town to put in its code that ADUs are allowed in any zoning district in our town. Is there any opposition to that?
No, definitely not for me.
Okay,
I had one question about some of the issue here. I think you guys removed the sort of the rental exceptions, like for occupancy or I'm sorry. It was about if we were going to rent them, we need to rent them to these people. And I know that you said that there was some conversation about 32 hours a week, but under F4 on the new one, it does say that long-term tenancy shall mean rental for a term of a minimum of 3 months, but doesn't that leave a gap between the definition for short-term rentals and long-term rentals? Because short-term rentals is 30 days. And then we have a definition for long-term. I mean, and this is just
And that's a good
one
question.
small thing, but
Yeah, currently, and I'll double check this, I believe your code actually says ADUs have to be rented for 6 months term.
Okay.
And however, staff felt direction we received from staff, which made sense for kind of the different employees that you have there, is that it should only be 3 months.
Thank you.
So it actually is reduced from 6 months to 3 months here. Definitely up for discussion. But no, that was a great point. And there is that difference, but you don't really look at these as far as, do you really want 31 days or 2 months? That would be up for discussion, but staff felt like 3 months would be sufficient.
Okay.
No, the discussion was how do we keep these, how do we keep the units occupied, worker friendly, Silverton centric. We've gone as far as allowing trailers, pull behinds, fifth wheels, because we're in such desperate need of housing. So how do we do this where we can have a block and know that's going to be rented up and not have it be just a constant turnover within certain neighborhoods? Is that right?
right, because we don't, I mean, this is not for vacation rental permits.
Right now.
This is all housing stock for somebody who's renting it for the 3 months or 6 month term.
Yeah, I just figured since we already have language out there that did that, I didn't know if we should.
No, I think that's a good point.
Like I said, it was a very small detail, but the rest of it is great.
Yeah, I really appreciate the thoroughness here and knowing, Bevan and Lucy's feedback, because they do hear what people ask. And I think that question of like, we had a discussion with folks and they never came back. And why is that? And I think this is huge. And so again, helping people know, hey, this is the use by right. You won't have to jump through as many hoops. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have a bunch of ADUs constructed all of a sudden, but it's one step in that direction that makes it easier for those things to happen.
Because since passing that ADU ordinance, it's been a couple of years now, I think. How many people have actually constructed ADUs? Do we know that?
I think in 2022, there was only one.
Okay.
Prior to that, I'm not sure, but I don't think a ton.
And a lot of them, I think, are also in business pedestrian where they might be used vacation rentals. So it has not really jump-started our affordable housing efforts yet.
And the biggest piece of feedback I've gotten from people inquiring about ADUs is that they're not allowed to be attached, and that's just a big cost burden to them, and it's almost not worth it. So I think that this is going to be a big help in that department, and hopefully having more attached ADUs.
That was a question I had, and I can't remember. I forgot to look it up again before this meeting, but I remember when we were first passing this ordinance, something with tap fees and how tap fees are assessed for ADUs when they're an attached building versus not attached. And that just sounds like a really huge barrier, I think, to building an ADU. Like if you have to pay an additional tap fee for your secondary dwelling, you know, that just tremendously increases the cost. Has that remained the same? Do we still have that language in this code?
ADUs use the same tap but a different meter.
Okay,
So you don't need you don't need an
You
additional.
don't have okay, regardless of attached or not attached. Great.
I think this is huge because 3 years ago when we moved here, we had several friends who were constructing and they had thought about putting an ADU, but the detached aspect of it just precluded it. And those were like 2 units that could be filled right now. So I think this is helpful.
Is there any other discussion? Someone be willing to make a motion? I think we can read the one from the agenda again.
And was there any discussion on with the modifications by the planning commission? Was that all fine as Katie presented?
Yeah, I was happy with the modifications. It sounded like the planning commission and the staff agreed, especially on that.
Right. Okay, I will make a motion for the first reading of ordinance 2023-07, an ordinance of the town of Silverton concerning accessory dwelling units by modifying section 16-1-20 zoning definitions, modifying section 16-3-20 R1A single family residential district, section 16-30-30 R1 single family residential district, section 16-3-40 R2 multiple family residential district, section 16-3-50 BP business pedestrian district, section 16-3-60 BA business automobile district, section 16-3-70 ED economic development district, and section 16-3-80 P public use district, and modifying section 16-8-80 placement and construction of accessory dwelling units for residential housing needs with modifications as recommended by staff and the planning commission.
It's almost as long as the ordinance.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards. Trustee Kränker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Bierma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Bevan and Katie.
Yeah, thank you. And I know I'm the one who presents, but I just want to give a lot of props to your staff over there. They do a lot of weighing in and helping frame all the text and everything. So it was super helpful with all of these ordinances, having them give us assistance as we did it.
Nathan, can you promote John to?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll move on to new business item D. First reading of ordinance 2023-06, an ordinance amending chapter 8, enacting article 4, transportation impact fee of the Silverton Municipal Code, authorizing the collection of a transportation impact fee. Hi, John.
Hi, everyone. So this ordinance is before, and by the way, Katie is so good at presenting these ordinances. You all know I like it short and sweet. Luckily, I think that this one is a lot more straightforward. But yeah, this particular ordinance is in order to help us fund our asphalt maintenance, which is, most of you know, it's probably common sense that asphalt maintenance is very expensive. We still have some years left on our street, but we're noticing more heavy traffic through town. With the development that we've seen in town, we're seeing development in the county as well. And Anthony Edwards discovered that there is a legal way that we can absorb some of that impact or recoup some of that impact with a road impact fee. And doing some more research, and this was an effort by Anthony, and he's kind of brought it to staff's attention, and then Gloria and I and Clay and Katie all worked on this. But the research is out there that heavy trucks in particular have a much higher impact than smaller vehicles do, than passenger vehicles. And with the legal modality that we can use to actually recover some of these fees, it'll help us maintain our asphalt, which is very expensive. And the sooner that we can get it done, the better. If we don't need to replace or overlay our asphalt for another 5 or 10 years, great. But whatever we can do to start saving for some of that, the better. And that's what this ordinance is aimed at. I'll take any questions that I can and deflect any that I can't.
Very, very straightforward.
No, I think it's important that we get this in right now, as there's a good chance of fleets of heavy trucks coming through town this summer. Would it affect that project that we've been briefed on recently, the EPA project?
As soon as the ordinance goes into effect, it will.
Very good.
So this is the first reading, so we'd still have one more reading and then.
Then publication.
It's my understanding that they wouldn't be moving through with those trucks until later in the summer anyway, but still.
Right.
Yeah.
I think too, something we talked about this in the finance committee a while back, and something that came up was just checking with some of our local contractors, right? Just to kind of make sure what kind of impact that would be, and like whether they're going to have to aggregate all of their various individual projects. And that wasn't so much the case. And so we were just trying to strike a balance, I think, in the finance committee discussion on how these fees are really being levied and to kind of to which entities that are having the most impact. So I think that was a profitable discussion in finance committee. And I think staff got good feedback from some of our local folks here on how this would or wouldn't impact them. And so the ordinance we have in front of us, John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think takes some of that local feedback into consideration, which made, I think, us on the.
That's correct. You're not aggregating, the contractors don't have to aggregate.
Yeah.
So if they've got 5 different projects, it's per project.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So something like the EPA's project would be one large project and would be aggregated, and the fee would be levied in that way. Whereas like a local contractor that's delivering gravel for this neighbor or individual client, and then for this would not be aggregated.
That's correct.
So how does this get tracked, or like what are the logistics behind this?
Well, there's some language in the ordinance there that covers that, and I don't know it wrote.
It looks like it's through a permitting process. So like if someone is hauling stuff through town, they need a permit for that.
Right. So
And that would go through John, right? That go through Public Works
It goes through
and through
Public
the
Works.
permitting process.
Mhm.
That is how the impact would be assessed.
And are we communicating this with, do we have a sense of who these entities are that are going to be most affected, and are we communicating that with them?
That may be a challenge for us, but I think that if you've got 50 heavy trucks coming through town, or even a few, we can always stop them.
Yeah, we're gonna
we can
know.
Stop them and say, hey, what's going on? And it's such a small community. I don't think it's going to be hard to locate people that are hauling that much material. So we can stop them and say, hey, you need a permit for this.
Mhm.
And the contractors that are in the know and the people that are in the know with the community, we should be able to work that out. There's always a danger that somebody would try to take advantage of our asphalt. But I think that it's more likely that we will figure out how to get it under control and get the due fees.
No, that's perfect. I was gonna use the notes that I took from Wednesday, May 10th. And I'm gonna use that as an example. We met with the gentleman here. And using the EPA and that reclamation project as an example, those trucks will be coming in from the north, from Montrose. Having this discussion, knowing what times of day they're gonna be coming through, how many trucks, between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. discussing that. The size of the truck, because that'll determine the impact on our roads. 1,500 trucks total or 15 to 20 per day is what was discussed. And then assessing a fee to each of those as they pass through town. That allows us, mainly John, to keep track and also build up a little war chest when it's time to fix on our roads and streets.
The cost, I was just looking for it, but the cost of even just what do they call it? Not a full repaving, a partial repaving was, I was blown away with it. I'm looking for it now. John, do you have that number? What was the cost?
To do all of Green Street, gutter to gutter and to county roads to the edge of town limits is around $4 million.
Yeah, so we figured that starting to collect some of these fees might be a good plan.
So no opposition to the impact fees for transportation? Okay. Like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance 2023-06, an ordinance amending chapter 8, enacting article 4, transportation impact fee of the Silverton Municipal Code, authorizing the collection of a transportation impact fee.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards,
Yes.
trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Great.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Anything.
And Anthony.
Ahead of
And
this.
thank you, Anthony,
Edwards.
as well.
Anthony did ask to be promoted.
Oh,
Oh,
Did you promote him to panel?
Did not raise his hand.
No, he
bye,
just,
John.
Oh,
there you
so,
go. Then,
all right.
No,
He's here. Oh, it's here.
It's muted.
Anthony, we can't hear you yet.
There it is.
Hopefully you can now. Sorry about the light.
Now we can.
I appreciate everybody's work on this. I just wanted to let you know, there was a question about staff time. I don't anticipate there'll be more than 5 entities, state entities, federal agency entities, as well as private entities a year in any one year. I think it's as easy as us letting them know, and on the BPMD side, we will let them know that this is in effect, and that if an entity is having multiple projects, but it's contracted by whether it be a private entity or another, so the contractors won't have to aggregate, but an entity that's doing multiple projects will not be able to separate their projects, if that makes sense. So we will make sure that we communicate that to them, and thanks again for your support.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Your work.
Okay, item number 6, approval of consent agenda item.
and I wanted to point out that I've included the purchase of a software for managing our budget that was recommended by our finance committee. If you'd like to discuss that further, you guys can pull that from this consent agenda. And there's also a year-to-date spending report, as well as March sales tax. And then a reminder on here, because there is the Iron Horse on there, that Green Street will be closed on May 27th from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m.
correct.
I got very excited about the budgeting software, so just want to plug that in.
So you don't want to pull it.
I mean, it's up to you.
I would like to include for the Iron Horse, Ian Burnett has been wonderful to work with. Deanne Gallegos is also assisting. She is the spokesperson for town in this event, and she's on the board as well. We will have a larger event at Memorial Park this year. They are including a beer garden, food trucks, and vendors. So stick around for that fun as well.
Nice.
And again, contracted events.
Right.
Reapproved.
And I just wanted to mention for transparency's sake that we do not have our usual payroll reports in our board packets because we just switched over from one payroll provider to another. So just waiting on kind of ironing out the kinks there so we can get our reports going as we normally do.
And I think you noted that would be in the next packet.
I did. Yeah.
Great. I just happened to see that the Kendall lift tickets were kind of half of what they were about last year. But we operated so many days.
That's the March. And so,
Oh, okay.
And
So
so
there
we-
were more. to
yeah, and
come
we'll have more to
for March
come,
and April.
as
Yeah,
well
okay.
as December. When we open in December of this year.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
we're actually doing really
Okay, so
well.
we're, yeah, that's actually the opposite.
I was like, gosh.
No, it's like, and then I was starting, yeah.
Yeah.
Then I got over to draft budget and that made sense, but okay, yeah, the March, thanks. Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second,
okay, roll call please, Matt.
Trustee Edwards,
Yes.
trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Birma,
yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Okay, thanks. Item 6, staff reports.
Right, now that we have a new member on our
Wait,
board.
that's actually 7.
Oh, wait,
I think we're off a
are we
number.
off? Oh, are we on committees?
We're on staff
Oh.
reports.
It's did 6 twice on the
Items
agenda.
again,
We're just keeping
Hey.
it going.
but staff reports.
So now that we have a new member on the board, welcome Liv. We can set a trustee retreat. So I will be sending out dates to you all tomorrow morning, hopefully at the end of June, to get that retreat on the books. And I'm hoping to have it in our new Columbine Park space. So that'll be
cool.
really exciting for you guys. Okay, and then I'd also like to point out the special note in the facility Parks and Rec staff report. This is a heads up that the Kendall stairs have degraded. And we're currently seeking quotes to fix them right now. It is a significant fix. And it was unbudgeted, so we wanted to put this on your radar as we look at our options, but I just kind of wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I'm so excited about the Columbine Park bathrooms. You know, I've been gone. It's so great to see all the progress and that's such a project, long time coming, and Todd's done a great job overseeing and managing and having it be on budget and on time. It just doesn't even feel real. So hats off for that.
I'm definitely hearing buzz, like people like, what's going in it again? What's happening? When can we use it? And so I think that there's really some energy.
So cool. Okay. Item number 7, committee reports. We'll start with the finance committee meeting, May 15th.
Dana can take it away.
Oh, goodness. All right, I got my notes, but I can't do it off the top of my head. Let me find some. Finance committee met. Like I said, Gloria got
I
very
can-
excited about the budgeting software.
I can start.
Great, go for it. Okay.
Yeah, so we went over the RFP.
Or we discussed having an RFP rather to allow for
People to, a local business to supply us with with janitorial goods and services, which is a little bit unorthodox.
but we decided since it's a local
Company, and we have been using a local company very much for those services, that we're going to open it up for them, or we could possibly open it up for them. And this is not the people that do the cleaning. This is just for supplies.
no,
We did talk about Gloria's
the budgeting software,
which I definitely understand the issue she was having. I was using Excel on in the business that I took over recently, and it's just not, even I like to think that I'm pretty good at it, and it doesn't matter. There's just better programs out there. So we all discussed that it would probably be, a lot easier for her to save her time, make them more efficient. So we were all in support of that.
And more transparent, sounds like.
Yeah, there were a lot of pluses, and she had put in some reviews from other people that had used it, and you could look at how, the layout, and it's a better product. Then there were the town tax refund memo. Do you want to take
Yeah,
this
sure.
one?
So Matt has been untangling a knot of town taxes and basically kind of making sure we're all up to date, that everything is straightforward and in order with the Department of Revenue. And through that process, the Department of Revenue let us know that we'd actually overpaid some of our lodging and town sales tax to the state. And so we got almost $40,000 back. So way to go, Matt. Just untangling that web of finances and accounting at town hall. So thank you for doing that. We got an update. Oh yeah, did you want to provide any more context on that?
Just say a quick update on that. I have received word from our DOR contact that he has received the requests and they're being processed. So they're all up and we'll be getting that money, about $19,900.
Wow. Great. We got an update of all of the costs and expenses that Matt has been tracking with Todd on the Combine Park project. And again, just really a lot of thanks to Todd and Matt for all of the detailed tracking, working with the contractors, and again, really making sure that that project is on time and under budget, really. So that's a huge win, I think, for town hall. We've already talked about the budget.
We discussed taxes.
We have discussed taxes, sales taxes.
And the audit is going to be done on time, possibly.
Wow.
This year.
Even
without
yeah.
Imagine how much faster we'll be with software.
I know.
So thank you, Gloria.
No, thanks, Matt. That was
Matt.
huge push. This was one of our goals, is to get it so we didn't have to do an extension this year.
Way to go. It's hard work.
With power outages and data lost.
Okay, we've heard a lot about the planning commission through our previous discussions, but the planning commission met on Tuesday.
We did, we discussed the defining of affordable housing, the accessory dwelling. We did discuss the emergency ordinance of the town of Silverton concerning wetland disturbance regulations. We did discuss that at great length. It was a fantastic discussion, lots of input from everybody. But we did remove that tonight for a reason. Yes. And then the last thing we touched on was the historic review committee and the concerning the establishment of said committee. And what does that look like? Terms, who's on it? It's pretty self-explanatory and everything that we already discussed.
And I'm happy to elaborate why we pulled the wetlands ordinance. So we had presented something that we weren't given direction to present. We were only given direction to present a jurisdictional ordinance, and we included some local controls as well in that. So we are whittling it back down to the jurisdictional, and that will be presented to you all at the next meeting.
It was a great meeting, about 3.5 hours long. Lots of good input. Lots of ADU talk. Everything we've already discussed tonight. So.
I feel like that effort was well worth it because it really made it speedy for us tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
And I just, doling out the feel goods. Lucy and Katie, they just do a great job. They really, really do. Keeping us all on track. So thank you.
Great. Okay, those were the two committee reports. On to item number 8, trustee reports.
I was wondering here, I realized, so I am on the chamber board as part of the town. And so I wondered, I don't know if that should go under committee reports, but I can give it as a trustee update. I don't know where we want to add that.
Yeah, I'll add that to committee reports.
Yeah.
We got a great update from Deanne and from some of our businesses and really looking forward to a great season. I think winter is always a little tricky when there's a ton of snow because people can't quite get here. So the snow's great. Everybody that's here is happy to be here, but people can't always get here. So kind of reflecting on those dual dynamics for both places like Silverton Mountain or some of our local restaurants that are open. But really looking forward to a great summer season, really great train bookings already. And that's just going to be huge, I think. Talked about some of the events coming up, which hopefully people are aware of. And I want to plug the Silverton Community Information Night again at Town Hall. Gloria, unless you're going to do that, but really encouraging folks, especially our summer residences, our summer businesses, to come out on Monday, June 5th from 6 to 8. Just to interact with town staff, county staff, the organizations that operate in town, hear about what's happening and just kind of get an update and feel like they're connected back to the community while they were away. I gave an update from some of the stuff we've already talked about in town. And we talked a good bit about the visitor center, and I appreciate Holly's comments earlier and wanted to shout out to Todd. I know he's working on a real skeleton crew. But we've heard just desire from the community to want to utilize that space out there, whether it's the track or especially the baseball field this time of year. Kids wanting to play, team, groups wanting to hit a ball or play kickball. So thanks to Todd for getting that mode. And yeah,
We got a fantastic update on Baker's Park. Flip Pinto gave us a terrific, enthusiastic update. They're moving along. Things are good.
So exciting.
They will be at the information night as well.
Fantastic.
Sharing what
I am excited about
their plans are.
I did just coincidentally snap some photographs of the gentleman down there mowing the South 40, as they say. And I will distribute those because they're great photographs.
Sally brought up too, shout out to all the folks that came out for Town Cleanup Day. It was a great partnership with the town of Silverton, Silverton Strong, the ambulance station, our radio station came out. And I think having all of those players there was just really a great community space. And I think we probably had around 40 or 50 folks show up, lots of kids, cleaned up for a couple hours. The rain mostly held off. And I just think it was a great chance for everybody to get out and kind of get ready for the summer and see each other again and hear some music and cook some hot dogs. So thank you to your crew too for being out there. Great.
Okay, continued business. Amy's been here the whole time. Thank you. We'll move on to the second reading for adoption of ordinance 2023-04 and ordinance amending chapter 6, business licenses and regulations. This is in regards to cigarette sales and sales of tobacco products.
And so, yeah, you all had your first reading last meeting. I have received no public comments since formally. And this is basically to restructure how we do our retail licenses. And as you'll see, the next item is also a resolution increasing that license from $1 to $175 to help fund the enforcement.
Right, so this is something we discussed in our last meeting, and do we have any further discussion about it?
Okay, I'll make a motion for the second reading, adoption of ordinance 2023-04 and ordinance amending chapter 6, business licenses and regulations of the Silverton Town Code with the repeal of Article 3, cigarette sales, and the replacement with new Article 3 regarding a tobacco product retail license.
Second.
Okay, thanks. Roll call, please, Matt.
Trustee Edwards.
Yes.
Trustee Cranker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Bierma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thanks. Okay, and now we'll move on to B, which, as Gloria said, is related to the fees. So a resolution 2023-07, resolution of the town of Silverton to amend the tobacco license fee and fee schedule, which I think also needs a motion.
Yes.
Would someone like to make a motion to approve resolution 2023-07, a resolution of the town of Silverton to amend the tobacco license fee and fee schedule?
So moved. There you go.
Second.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards,
Yes.
trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Okay, great. And similarly, this next item C is a second reading of ordinance 2023-05. This is related to amending our code to allow for accounts to be paid with payments other than just a check.
Correct. So just a little bit of a context. Currently, our code only allows for town accounts payable to be paid via check as approved by the board. This ordinance is to allow our code to better reflect the town's purchasing policy and to modernize our accounts payable system to allow us to pay with ACH payments, e-checks, and so forth. Especially as certain governmental agencies such as the Colorado Department of Revenue doesn't accept paper checks anymore. So
this is right.
Yeah. And also, if we can pay certain subscriptions, not the word, but contractual things, or some monthly payments like our employee health insurance, we can avoid late payments because currently the way the schedule runs is it's almost impossible to get the checkouts before the due dates.
Right.
Because the second Monday is almost
Ends up with our meetings.
always too close to the 14th of the month.
Well, this is a part of your mainstreaming of everything, so I think this is awesome.
Yeah, so do I.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading for the adoption of ordinance 2023-05, an ordinance amending section 4-3-120 of the Silverton Municipal Code to allow for the treasurer to pay town accounts payable that are billed on a monthly basis per subscription and or contract, payments to government agencies and accounts that fall within the purview of the town's purchasing policy for department heads, check, card, or ACH payment.
Second.
Thanks. Okay, ready for the roll call.
Trustee Edwards,
Yes.
trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Okay, and that brings us to item D, the OHV petition update.
I do have an update that was not published in the board packet. As of this morning, a citizen filed a protest against the petition due to form. This hearing will be held at 10 a.m. on Thursday, June 1st in the municipal courts room in Town Hall. Again, if this protest is successful, as it is a protest to form, the petitioners will be able to resubmit once again after the faults of the form of the petition are corrected. And that is assuming that is if the protest is successful.
In municipal court on June 1st.
In the room here, located in the building.
Yes, not the town boardroom, but the one across the hall where you argue your parking tickets.
Everyone at home, that's fine.
Okay, thanks for the update. That brings us to public comment. Do we have any in-person public comment? Amy? Or anyone online? Okay. Seeing none, we will adjourn this meeting at 8:43. Have a good night, everyone.